Welcome back to the deep dive. So, today's mission is a little different.
It is, yeah.
Instead of trying to synthesize dozens of sources, we're going to plunge into a single, just intensely detailed document. It's a snapshot of reality so overloaded with observation that it really forces you to re-examine how memory and especially trauma actually works.
Right.
This deep dive is all about processing one scene that merges, well, external absurdity with this profound, almost terrifying interiority.
And that material is what we're calling the recursive archive. We're treating the source not as fiction, but as an absolute observed reality.
Okay. So what makes this archive so unique?
Well, it's the non-selective documentation. I mean, it chronicles not just what happens, but all the layers of self-consciousness, the brand names that sort of define identity, and the compulsive...
That deep underlying drive.
Exactly, the drive that marks all human action. It's memory just stripped bare and hyper-detailed.
And we begin on Prospect Street in Cambridge, specifically inside the Man o' War Grille. You can almost hear the clatter of foot traffic between Inman and Central Squares.
Right.
Our focal point is Matty Pemulis, a 23-year-old man, a prostitute, and he's just sitting down to eat.
And we're about to see, just in the space of a few minutes, how the specific chaos of the outside world, it perfectly mirrors the specific horror that's archived inside his own mind.
So we have to start with the granularity, right? The level of observation.
We have to. We know Matty is a neat eater, even with calamari soup at a place they call Little Lisbon.
Okay.
He has a sharp face, tight short hair, and this defining physical feature. A permanent smile. His Dan always told him to wipe it off.
And the waiter, there's a detail about the waiter that just sticks out.
Oh, absolutely. The waiter has, bits of blood stain or maybe soup on his apron.
Yeah.
But the thing is just so out there.
Is the fez.
Is the fez. Yeah, he wears a fez. And the text is specific, no discernible reason.
That fez is such a perfect example of what this archive does. It catalogs data indiscriminately. It registers the essential, Matty smile right alongside the utterly absurd.
The waiter's hat, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a compulsive documentation that immediately sets the stage for the external chaos that's about to unfold right outside the window.
And that chaos arrives with this devastating tragicomic dissonance.
While Matty is eating, a female, described as a bag lady type, layered in all this clothing, she lifts her skirts and just moves her scraggly old bowels right there on the pavement.
And the resulting pile is noted so clinically as steaming slightly.
Steaming slightly.
We have to pause on that. Why is the temperature of human waste essential information for the archive?
I think it suggests that the observer, Matty, is recording everything without any judgment. It's about fidelity over emotional response.
It's just the sheer, unvarnished physical truth of the moment.
Exactly. And the public reaction kind of validates that tension. Yeah. The college kids at the next table, they're overheard expressing confusion. They don't know whether to be totally ill or totally awed.
Odd. Wow. So it's this moment of profound bodily function being met by, what, subjective intellectual paralysis?
Pretty much. And the street scene, it just doesn't let up.
No.
Immediately after this, two Brazilians, dressed in bell-bottoms and tall shoes, are moving across the glass. And they're embroiled in what looks like a really violent argument.
So one's walking forward, one backward, right? Locked in this kind of dance.
Yeah, dance of conflict. Speaking this muffled, high-volume street Portuguese, dramatically pointing at their own chests, basically saying, "You say this shit to me."
And what's so fascinating here is the absolute solipsism of that confrontation.
Oh, completely. They're so wrapped up in their own internal narrative of honor and insult that they completely miss the extreme steaming reality happening right next to them.
They miss the dollop of bowel movement on the walk.
They miss it entirely.
So the archive is documenting a profound failure of human...
Of attention, absolutely. Yeah. The characters in this external scene are just trapped inside their own rhetorical bubbles. They're failing to register objective truth.
And then the focus tightens, doesn't it, onto one single, deeply observed individual.
Poor Tony Krause.
Poor Tony Krause.
He is the specter of ultimate decline. He looked god-awful, sucked out, hollow-eyed, grave-ready.
And his skin... There's a metaphor used that's just chilling.
The greenish-white of extreme depth marine life. I mean, it anchors his appearance to pure, cold decay. He's already a ghost.
And he's so far gone that his identity has been totally replaced by consumer specificity.
Right. The archives notes that Matty only identifies him by these style markers. The boa, the red leather coat, the specific trousers and cap.
So the man is just a composite of brands.
That's all that's left.
Yeah.
And his movement, it just underscores this tragic comic dissonance. He isn't walking. He's making an infinite series of grand entrances into pocket after pocket of space.
And he's holding his hand to his throat's hollow.
In a way that recalls black and white era starlets descending curved stairs. So he's decomposing, but he's manifesting this queenly hauteur.
Which raises the question, if the observer catalogs external absurdity this closely, what happens when they turn that same clinical, non-judgmental lens inward?
And that's the critical transition. The chaos of Prospect Street hits its peak, and Maddie's mind just retreats. It retreats into the internal, recursive archive of his personal trauma.
Documenting it with the exact same forensic specificity he used to catalog the fez and the steaming feces.
The background details are necessary here. Maddie's father, his day, came from Louth in Leinster in 1989. Worked on the Saudi docks coiling ropes as big around his phone poles.
And he died of pancreatic complaints when Maddie was 17. The core abuse started when Maddie was 10.
But the key psychological element here is Maddie's unique recall. Unlike so many people who would suppress or block out these memories.
Which would be the normal expected response.
Right. He remembers every inch and pimple of every single time. He's a perfect, unwilling chronicler of his own suffering. He's the ultimate recursive archivist.
And that archive, it begins with the mechanics of fear. It's not just a blur of terror.
No, it's segmented. It's broken down by sensory details.
Yeah.
We hear the door on well-oiled hinges, opening, not suddenly, but with the implacable slowness of a rising moon.
Wow. The fear is geological in scope, inevitable, vast.
And the description of his die's presence is just as specific. You see him weaving across the floor in darned socks, smelling of what Maddie and his brother Mickey just called something else.
A smell that Maddie later identified as malt liquor.
Right. The audible breath of the drunk man, the shift in the bed center of gravity, these physical shifts are the archived harbingers of what's coming.
And this is where the trauma becomes recursive, isn't it? It gets caught in the psychological double bind.
It does, because it wasn't just threat. It was also wrapped in this tenderness. Caresses that were just over the line from true ethnic Irish fatherly affection. Or just the emotional largesse of a drunk man where all rules are suspended.
Day would even offer soft apologies for previous savagery or discipline.
And this ambiguity, this tension between the physical threat and the offered affection, it's crucial to Maddie's self-judgment. The archive records Day's specific gesture.
Cupping the pillow-warm cheek.
And using his huge pinky finger to trace the hollow between Maddie's throat and jaw. That moment of tenderness is just inextricably linked to the impending violence.
The archive also focuses heavily on Maddie's response, which becomes a kind of feedback loop.
A terrible one. Maddie would shrink away, even though the archive notes he already understood that his fear was part of what brought it on.
So his fear became an ingredient in the act itself.
And Day uses that fear to accelerate things. He gets angry, demanding, "Who are we scared of then?"
He uses these rhetorical questions not to understand, but to trap Maddie. He turns the child's terror into a psychological accusation against his own character.
Yeah, is it a fookin' you're scared of then? You think a Dan has not on his mind but a fook?
And this rhetorical entrapment, it forces Maddie to judge himself.
Exactly. Maddie initially cursed himself for a coward and deserving, believing his fear somehow validated the abuse.
But the genius of the complete recall of the archive is that it allows the 23-year-old Maddie to gain a mature perspective later on.
And that mature perspective is the core insight of this entire documentation process. Because he remembers every single detail, Maddie can finally realize that the event was laid out before the first slim line of doorlight broadened.
Meaning his actions, his fear, his self-judgment.
They made no difference. The archive proves the inevitability of the act, and in doing so, it absolves the victim of agency in that moment.
And before we move on, the archive also records the silence of the witness.
His younger brother, Mickey, only 5, who lay silent as a tomb, on his side, face to the wall and hidden. He never spoke about it.
The omission itself, the silence, is meticulously logged.
It is.
So the final layers of Maddie's memory, they focus on the clinical mechanics and the specific archived objects of the violation.
Right. So, unable to fight, Maddie develops a coping mechanism. He performs sleep. He adopts the slight smile of truly sleeping faces. He even executes cartoon snores and exhaled whistles.
All while his teeth clacked together from being shaken by fear.
Then comes the mechanical sound that the archive cannot ignore, the petroleum jelly. The documentation is so precise it records the oval sound of the cap coming off.
The specific stone and pond plop of a Vaseline cap.
And crucially, the archive notes that the cap was not childproof. The world's carelessness, codified in plastic and sound, merges with this private horror.
And the violation itself is recorded through these raw sensory inputs.
Hearing Dom muttering, then feeling the ice-cold, awful cold finger smearing the stuff around Maddie's rosebud, his dark star. It's just clinical, immediate, and unforgiving.
And here's a jarring moment of adult reflection that the archive allows for.
Yes. Maddie, at 23, finds one detail to be thankful for, that his dog at least used a lube.
It's this thin sliver of humanity given to the perpetrator, even though the origins of his dog's familiarity with the product remain a mystery that not even adult perspective could illuminate.
Well, the archive concludes not with the trauma fading, but with a specific documented horror of the abuser's death.
Died of cirrhosis and acute pancreatitis. The archive explicitly contrasts the gentle, imagined death, slumping quietly over, with the observed reality.
And the observed reality was, well, a catastrophic physical event. Died choking on aspirated blood.
Described as a veritable fountain of the dark blood, which coated Maddie in a spray paint russet.
And the air itself, just like the doorknob and the Vaseline cap, it became part of the evidence. The blood particles were aspirated so terribly fine, like almost atomized, and they just hung in the air over the bed.
A horrifying image.
His final expression, documented with that same relentless clinical eye. Dare's eyes were cat yellow eyes wide open, his face screwed into the very most god-awful, rictus-sized grin of pain. His last thoughts completely unknowable.
So despite witnessing all of this, the total documentation of his own abuse and the grotesque final moments of his father, Maddie, still honors his father's memory.
He does, by toasting him with his first shot whenever he indulged.
The persistence of ritual, the profound complexity of the human heart that's capable of both perfect clinical recall and ongoing affection. It's maybe the deepest recursion of all.
So if we step back from the specific content, what have we really distilled here?
Good question.
We've analyzed an exhaustive documentation process. I think the key insight for you, the listener, is that the human mind, when it's subjected to extreme duress, often becomes this hyper-articulate observer.
And the internal archive of trauma ends up being documented with greater, more clinical specificity than any external event.
Exactly. We see that every detail from the physical world, the brand names, the angle of the light, the sound of that Vaseline cap, it all becomes indelible evidence of psychic pain. It ensures the memory remains available for later for mature processing.
So this level of documentation is the mind's way of seeking a final, undeniable truth in the face of all that psychological confusion.
Right. But if our minds function as these hyper-articulate observers, continuously archiving every specific detail and every recursive self-judgment, maybe we should consider the cost of that fidelity.
The archive is perfect.
But the pain persists.
Which leaves us with this provocative thought. If your mind were creating a perfect, non-selective archive, what is the single specific detail from your own life, whether tragic, absurd, or just intensely mundane, that you believe that archive has sealed away and refuses to forget?
Something to ponder.
Something to ponder as you reflect on the deep dive.